Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today I'm going to explore Venus's passage through the sign of Leo, which lasts for 24 days and begins on the 11th of July. If you recall, last year Venus made its way through the sign of Leo for 4 long months. So what can we expect this year? It starts off in a truly powerful way in an opposition with Pluto, but it's also emerging from a beautiful trine with Neptune. If you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. I'm going to go through all of the astrology, but please stay with me. I will then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect for the next 3 weeks from this very influential player. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, as always, I truly appreciate your support, views and interaction. As I've shared, about 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. It's a major part of what I do and I truly love working with people directly. If you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device, you can do that by clicking on the subscription link below. I also provide an overview of each day so we can get the big picture as well as enjoy our specific zodiac forecast. If you're a patron, you'll get an upload on a Venus factoid. You can become a patron from $3 a month. I truly appreciate all that support as well. And finally, if you'd like to make that journey from zodiac horoscopes and ascend to more serious astrology, if you do give me 3 pieces of personal birth data, I can produce for you your quite unique birth chart, but also interpretation, your life roadmap report, which will give you stunning insights into the patterns that are played out in your life, but how you can work with these better future forwards. In my 30% package off, you can also get your 12 months transits reports to see how the planets in the sky are interacting with your unique blueprint. And as ever, if you know your tropical astrology, why not check out my draconic charts below too. So on July the 11th at 4:19 p.m. Universal Time, Venus makes its way into Leo. So let's just explore the archetypes of Venus. Venus rules 2 zodiac signs. The first, of course, is Taurus. And here she's very much about money, self-worth, our values, our appreciation of the good things in life, can be quite creative, a maker, an appreciation of the arts, things like pottery, fabric, textiles, but also an appreciation of fashion, jewellery, good food and good wine. And Venus here can also be very sensuous in terms of intimacy. Now the other sign it rules is Libra, which is an air sign, whereas of course Taurus is an earthy sign. So the air sign of Libra, very much about balance, relating, how we interact, trying to find harmony. It can be to do with partnership and can also be where we try to find collaborations, where we accept that we don't necessarily get all that we want, but we can give and take. So that diplomacy of Venus, very powerful for its rulership of the sign of Libra, can be very charming, very much to do with how we dress and present ourselves, but it can be a little bit superficial. What about Venus in Leo? Well, the sign of Leo is the 5th zodiac sign, and of course it is ruled by the sun. So the magnificence of the sun is magnifying the raw energy of Venus, which is very much to do with allure, desire, and drawing good things to us. So if you're wanting to up your social interaction, mix and mingle more, have a bit more drama in your life, this is going to be an exciting 24 days. Venus can also make us more warm-hearted and generous through this transit. And also it confers upon us excellent taste. But people who have Venus in Leo, their natal charts, can be a bit more drawn to status. Now, in terms of the event chart, on the screen now. I'm sharing that, and of course that puts Venus in the 5th house, which of course is the 5th zodiac sign of Leo. And you can see that Pluto is in opposition in the 11th house, very much about how we're all collectively connected, but also going through this huge change, because the sign of Aquarius can be a bit detached, but essentially it is about we. The sign of Leo is a bit more about me. It's much more about what we want for ourselves in terms of expressing our artistry or talent or flair. If you have been practicing something or developing a skill set, perhaps as a home hobby, and you want to take it out and share it to more people, the next 24 days is a wonderful opportunity to do that. But in a romantic relationship, I think we have to be accepting that the opposition between Venus and Pluto across these two signs really brings up that contrast between perhaps the friendships, the Aquarius energy, and what we may want more as an individual. So if you're in a relationship where you don't feel the other person is committed as you would like, or you are, this could be a very telling juncture. But equally, if you meet someone new, you may find them very irresistible, but it's also important to understand that our desires can be leveraged through the power of Pluto. So Pluto likes a degree of control, as we know. There's not much middle ground with good old Pluto. So it may be that you could meet someone at this time where it just seems that you're just fated to be together. But if you are in a relationship where you do find it more difficult to give and take, there's power struggles in simple language, those could come up now. But the ironic thing, as I mentioned in my intro, is that Venus is coming out of one of its most magical alliances with Neptune. So that's still in play, it's just in a disassociate way. So if you have met someone, just met someone, and with Mercury and Jupiter having sparkled just before this transition occurs, there has been the potential for some very upbeat exchanges to go on. Also, Jupiter, the planet of hope and faith, expansion, good fortune, is in a beautiful link with the North Node, which is very much to do with our instincts, the point of destiny in Aries, particularly our instincts in this sign. So if you have a conversation with someone and you're being pulled towards them in some way, whether it is around a business relationship, because remember Venus can be about money, there may be something that's compelling you at this particular time. Now, what about the event chart from a natal perspective? Well, that does have an ascendant on the anaretic degree in Scorpio, so right on the last degree. And in fact, there's an interception, so there's no middle ground in Sagittarius, if you like. So the first house is over 60 degrees, which is really quite unusual, usually a bit smaller than that. But what we can see is therefore that Jupiter moves into house 7, which is very much to do with relating, and of course the sign of Venus through its rulership of Libra, very much about relating. And we have the North Node in the 4th house, how we feel about things. But the position of Venus is in the 8th house. So if we look at this event in a more technical sense, over the next 24 days, there's every chance we will be considering something to do with how invested we are financially, emotionally, how attached we are, how much we're all in or all out. So that's the big existential question that Venus in that opposition with Pluto through the event chart from a proper Placidus viewpoint. Now, as ever, this is based on universal time and Greenwich, not because I'm in Britain, but because of the prime meridian. So I feel we can all collectively relate to this energy. But it's always important in astrology to be mindful of the planet right at the top of the northern hemisphere. And in this case, it's the moon. And the moon's in the very practical Virgo, but it is in an almost exact opposition with Neptune. And going across the 10th and 4th houses, I think there's a possibility that if we're not quite sure on certain relationships, it might be quite hard to get the clarity. So what are the other aspects that Venus is going to be forging through its transit through Leo? Because I think that's really important. So we know about the clash with Pluto, but we can know that Pluto can bring something in as well as challenge what we've got. But we do have an amazing link between Venus and Jupiter, the two planets of fortune. Venus obviously the lesser and Jupiter the greater benefics. In traditional astrology, from the 19th to the 25th of July, that can be an extremely fortunate time, but particularly on July the 21st. And that's also when Mars is going to storm its way into Gemini. Interesting. And we do have a square as July comes to the close between Venus and Uranus, and that makes its way into the start of August and is exact on the 2nd. So if there is a weakness in a relationship, whether it's a business tie, an emotional involvement, a friendship with the family, or that all in, perhaps all on or all off, hot and cold, romantic, hot and heavy, perhaps sexual union, it's all going to come out in the proverbial wash, as my mum used to say. It's actually her birthday today, as I record this. She's no longer with us, but July the 9th, so happy birthday to my mum, who I used to call the Prophet Else, because she was quite good at seeing trends, well, very good. And so by the end of July and the early part of August, as much as the Venus transit can create glamour, excitement, social interaction, pleasure, definitely some moments when our hearts can beat faster, if you're really serious about a particular involvement, the outcome will become clear, because with Venus and Uranus, if something isn't working, we're going to want to escape from it and reassert our individual space. But of course, Venus rules the sign of Taurus, where Uranus is, so there's a mutual receptivity. So it wouldn't be a surprise if some of the tensions that could play out from this transit were financial, but it is definitely loaded with a lot of potential for pleasure too. So, you know, it's a chance to get out and enjoy those invitations. And even if we're, you know, a little bit weary sometimes, I'm not sure whether we really want to turn up to a last minute invite, I think a good chance for all of us to push ourselves out a little bit and enjoy the moment. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. So Aries, for you, the great thing about this particular event is it's asking you to really embrace your gorgeousness. Now, that's not me saying you're not gorgeous all the time anyway, but I think we'd all, or most of us would agree, that there's some days when we get up and look in the mirror and think, oh, blimey O'Reilly. And it's so easy to focus in on those little imperfections. But you are gorgeous, and you have an opportunity to feel even more gorgeous over these next 3 weeks or more. And maybe there is somebody that you know in a friendship environment, or a friend of a friend, or who you're going to encounter through a social meetup, that could become a very much more important player in your world. And it's that old saying, if we don't buy the raffle ticket, we can't win the prize. And because Saturn has been sat along with Neptune in house 12, just bogging you down a little bit, making you much more mindful of your vulnerabilities or things from the past that weren't so easy, and perhaps you've been working your way through letting those things go and releasing them. Now's a great opportunity to really step forwards and enjoy the opportunity for true pleasure. Just be aware that with the moon in your personal 6th house and Neptune in your 12th house, don't overanalyze things. One of the great gifts you have when you're on top form is to listen to your hunches. And with the North Node in your sign linking brilliantly to the most fortunate of all planets, Jupiter, if you have a conversation that feels right, go, go, go. So Taurus, do you know, when it comes to taste, you Taurans have often got such great taste. You know, whether it's lovely jewelry or the accessories you have or the way you dress. You know, even if you're someone who's not into high fashion and likes to keep it very earthy, the chances are when you buy something, it's going to be something that really has got that extra element of quality. And because the 4th house is very much about our home and our environment, it wouldn't be a surprise if you use those supreme and exquisite taste and applied them to your immediate environment. So if you are looking to buy some new furnishings, or you're looking to buy some soft fabrics, curtains, bed coverings, or you're looking to redecorate, the next 24 days is certainly a great time to go about that. But also, as this event begins, the sun's still in the very upbeat for you third house, but Mercury has already moved into your fourth house and is going to be followed by the sun on the 22nd. So you are moving into a period of the year when your home, your hearth, your family or extended family, or your emotional needs or emotional strengths and qualities are all going to shine out brightly. And if you are someone who really likes to play host, if you do invite people around, the chances are you're going to make it into a really lovely event. Now, what about Venus in terms of money and the fourth house? It's not beyond the realms of possibility that you could have some fortune linked to the property market, or perhaps to the family. Perhaps someone could be very generous to you. If you're trying to get on the property ladder, perhaps your folks can in some ways assist, or you're going to help out someone. But equally, the fourth house and the home could be an opportunity for you to get much more in touch with what you want in terms of your emotional connections, in terms of relating. Now, relating takes on many different forms. People often write to me on YouTube and say, I'm not in a relationship, haven't been in a relationship for 10 years, and I don't want to be in a relationship. And I always try to pitch my videos not to just focus on romance, because relationships is a very complex area for us all, but we do all relate. We even have a relationship to ourselves. And perhaps that's really where we can see the opportunity for you personally, because Venus is your relationship to your inner emotional world. How do you feel about your attractiveness, your self-worth? Do you feel very settled in yourself? Because if you are settled in yourself, doing things with your home or your family, those relationships can really shine out for you the brightest. But if you are someone who's wanting to connect to someone in that more intimate way, I would be guided by how comfortable you feel with that person. As much as attraction and how much we fancy someone is a key element, it is about how comfortable and safe we feel too. So be guided by that principle over these next few weeks. So Gemini, you're very much one for ideas, and that gives you an effervescence, a sparkle, because you're a very flexing person. You don't necessarily want to talk about the same things all of the time. But if you wanted to talk about something that you feel really passionate about over the next 3 weeks, the chances are the way you convey the ideas, not just the ideas themselves, can take on that extra bit of luster. If you're someone who loves performance, whether it's in your local bar singing the karaoke, or you do something more, you play a musical instrument, or you love reading, all of these things can bring a lot of pleasure to you over the next few weeks. But if you are having a meeting and you are talking to someone, and perhaps it is about a business proposition, with Venus and Pluto in the mix, sometimes the charm can be absolutely ladled on. Not necessarily by you, but by the person you encounter, or we encounter. So just be aware of what the motive is, because if something's offered, whether it's a deal, a proposition, or a date, we need to know where the other person is coming from. If it matches where we're coming from, we've got a match made in the proverbial heaven, because if we understand each other, that makes things so much easier. But of course, Jupiter in your sign is going to be very significant for you through the next year. And he's making a great link to the North Node in your 11th house. Your friendships, your connections to others. But it could be you taking the initiative, ringing around or texting people, getting a gathering going, because your interactions with others would give you a great deal of pleasure. You are coming into what is a very mighty conjunction between Mars and Uranus, which peaks on the 15th of July. So that's a backdrop for this event. And if there are storm clouds around a relationship and you don't really feel you know where you stand, and you're constantly surprised by where someone's coming from, or the admissions they're making, or their evasiveness, then I feel the opposition between Venus and Pluto, and particularly the square with Uranus by the end of the month, could see you wanting to move forwards much more as a free spirit. But it, of course, depends on your unique circumstances. Now, Cancer, for you, this transition from your sign, where you may have been very busy in terms of your creative talents, moving into Leo can trigger an uptick in income. Venus moving into the second solar house is one of the most reliable transits to predict that. You know, I've seen it happen so many times. The complexity is because of the opposition to Pluto. There could be someone else in the mix. So, for example, if it's a business situation, a partnership or a revenue share or some kind of collaborative venture, and it's about getting that sweet spot, which Venus often helps us to achieve by its more harmonizing and diplomatic vibe between what's fair for us and fair for the other person. And because we do have that colossal conjunction developing between Mars and Uranus, which peaks on Monday the 15th, maybe something is breaking in your situation, which is very exciting, but it's very different, and it may move very quickly indeed, and it may feel like you're on a toboggan run, but there's no way of stopping the downhill speed, which in itself can be intoxicating, but of course could feel a little bit edgy as well. But if you are wanting to enjoy the good things in life, creature comfort, splash a little bit of loot if you can afford it, you may want to do so over the next couple of weeks. But if you've been on a strict diet plan, I think it's going to be more difficult to adhere to that over the next few weeks, because Venus very much, through its rulership of both Taurus and Libra, can be a love of calorific goodies. So if you've been really trying to be very disciplined, you could be tempted, because you could get together in a jolly gathering and people will be saying, oh, go on, try this, try for this, absolutely delicious. And you know, it may be very difficult not to pitch in and enjoy the moment too. So Leo, for you, this is a wonderful arrival, because Venus moving into our sign really can make us much more aware of our personal presentation. And you're someone who has quite a consciousness about that anyway. But I feel that maybe a new approach could give you somewhat of a lift. But if you are single and you are open to the option of meeting someone, certainly from the 19th to the 25th, when Venus forges that amazing link to Jupiter, if you attend a gathering across those days, could turn out to be great fun, very sociable, very bubbly, and perhaps even see some kind of connection. But what about if you're in an existing relationship? Well, you've gone through quite the soul searching period of your year. Once we get through the second Capricorn full moon and the sun moves into your sign, you're going to move into the moment much more. But I feel that there may still be some issues that aren't quite chiming for you in terms of that existing relationship, and it doesn't have to be romantic. And maybe is the opposition with Pluto that greets this event is suggesting that what you want from a situation and what someone else wants from a situation may be in stark contrast. Sometimes with Venus opposite Pluto, it is very hard to get that midpoint between both sides of each person's interests, if you like. So it just depends on your unique circumstances. If you're in a relationship where, you know, you have felt a bit cramped in, or you've been worrying about it, because Venus going through the 12th house can see us much more reflective, perhaps even nostalgic for someone from our past, perhaps also caught up in reminiscing from loved ones who are no longer with us. And if a partner hasn't been particularly sensitive to that process, now you're going to start to feel much more self-assured, but also much more in your own energy in terms of your attractiveness. So if you are wanting to move on from a relationship that hasn't quite been working, I think the end of this month could be the key time, particularly once we go through the Aquarius full moon and we go into the start of August. But equally, if you're wanting to improve a relationship, those listening skills that are always very important could be key. But I don't think it's so much yours, because I feel that this is your time to strengthen up your individual presentation, your vibe, draw more glory to you. your regal side can strut its stuff, and it's going to strut its stuff more as this month goes on. So Virgo, for you, an interesting transition, because Venus is still in touch with Neptune in your sector of relating, and in the latter few degrees of the sign of Cancer was in such an amazing link with Neptune. Neptune since 2012 may have created some magical moments for you relationship wise, but also some crushing disappointments. But if you have been talking to someone over the last few days and there is something just developing, simmering away that feels really sweet, the chances are you and the other person may want to keep your cards a little bit close to your chest for now. It doesn't mean to say it's not going to go somewhere positive, but I just feel that period of privacy will give you the chance to really find out what's what. But equally, some Virgo people may start to think very seriously about someone from their past. It doesn't mean to say that you're going to definitely get back with that person or it's the right thing to do. Only you will know if it's the right thing to do, not the planets. The planets can create the situation, the backdrop of energy for you to work with. But if you are feeling particularly nostalgic, it is very important to check out what your motives are. And Pluto's excellent in that regard, because it could be quite exacting in reminding you of the imperfections the first time round. But if there was something or someone that you felt there was unfinished business around, this is going to be an interesting few weeks. But you know, the converse can be true, Virgo. And if a relationship just isn't working for you in the way you want, you're going to be really analysing it very carefully. Now that may be something that's part and parcel of your nature. But Venus in the 12th house likes to really understand the psychological dimension. And it's a very spiritual location as well. It can be to do with healing. If you feel a relationship could be healed, for example, by both having some counselling or developing some new perspectives, this can be an enriching period. But because of the square with Uranus at the end of this month, which is in house 9, and because concurrent to this event, Mars and Uranus are starting to forge a connection, a conjunction, which will peak on the 15th. If you're really not happy, that does create the conditions to break free, to be truly honest. But as I say, it's all in your gift, and these are decisions for you to make. But if you are someone who doesn't particularly want a romantic relationship, but perhaps you'd like some deeper connections in terms of friendships or interests, it could be some healing can go on to create more space within you. And I think once Mercury moves into your sign, you rule on the 26th, that will give you a good fix in how far you've come through the process. Libra, this is a particularly exciting transition for you, because the 11th house is very much about where we connect, network, but it's also about our highest hopes and values, and it can be about friendships. So the next 3 weeks could be a chance for you, particularly once the Sun moves on the 22nd into Leo, to really increase that amount of connection that you have. If you are someone who's pretty happy in any kind of meet-up situation with people, you're really going to be in for a jolly time, particularly from the 19th to the 25th of July. But also, if you're in a relationship, obviously having Pluto opposite your ruler Venus is an interesting one. If you want different things from your future, you could have a bit of a tussle over the next few days, not least because the part of your chart that's to do with devotion, which is where Uranus is joined by Mars as this week draws to a close, and that combination reaches a peak on Monday. Now that 8th house is not just where we're most invested, most devoted, it's also where sex is really at its hottest point. Now Uranus can be about freedom, but it can also be about instability. Mars is obviously very much about rock and roll. It can be about desire because it's more scorpionic for you on this particular event. So if you're feeling that you've got a connection to someone, you like them, you can have enjoyable days out and experiences, but there isn't that electric energy that you really crave for, it's going to be interesting how this plays out for you. If you're someone who is lucky enough to have everything you want, this can be a very, very jolly time. If you're single, however, the chances of connecting and meeting someone are definitely upped over the next few weeks, particularly from the 22nd when the sun moves into Leo. But what I would say to you is the link from the 19th to the 25th between Jupiter in your 9th house of exploration and also Venus in your 11th house of friendship suggests even if you go away on a group trip with some friends, or go out on a night with people from work or people you've known for a long time, there is a much greater chance of some kind of magic unfolding for you. So Scorpio, Venus moves right into the pinnacle of your chart. So that's very much how we connect to the wider world. So for many of us, that is through our work, but not exclusively. If we think that Venus can be about the arts, for example, if you're someone who's super creative, a wonderful opportunity over the next few weeks to get your work, the things you make or craft, into a more public domain. But equally with Mercury in this location, Mercury has perhaps been pushing you to think about your skill set, perhaps evolving it in some way. It may be that you've got talents that you want to share with other people, and Venus in the 10th house would be a great chance for you to cultivate an audience. But that opposition between Venus and your modern ruler of Pluto could make this also about a property possibility in some ways. If you are wanting to invest or move or change your current abode, that could be part of the equation. But in terms of relationships, if things are going well, Venus moving into house 10 can see us take that next step forwards in a more self-confident way of forging the bond in a more official manner. So everyone outwards gets to know about the status of the relationship. So if you're really proud about how things are developing and you do want to move in or get spliced, this could be a time when the arrangements speed up. Now, what about that combination of your traditional ruler Mars and Uranus? Because that's a backdrop for this event. And if you are single, it can create a lot of excitement and perhaps a connection to someone you encounter in your everyday world. But Mars aligning with Uranus in a relationship which is not going well could be very significant. And also with Venus going into the clash with Uranus at the end of this month and the start of Uranus, if you don't feel that the person you're with quite aligns to what you want in terms of being proud of them or how they are with your folks, that could be the weak point over the next few weeks. Sagittarius, you're a sign that really has an appreciation of cutting through to what's real. And for sure, your enthusiasm can be infectious. Your love of travel and adventure means that over the next 3 weeks, if you are heading off somewhere different, particularly when Venus connects to your ruler Jupiter in your sector of relating from the 19th to the 25th, peaking on the 21st, that could be a really brilliant period of days to enjoy some special connections. But also the 9th house is about higher truth. And so if you're in a time where it isn't quite clear what the score is between you, and you've not been quite managing to get that clarity that you want, the opposition between Venus and Pluto can make you very determined not to make way on that point and that principle. You need to have that clarity. But the combination between Mars and Uranus in your 6th house, which is hotting up now, means that there could be an urgent connection to someone for your work or a very ordinary location. But if you are in a time where you feel it's all give on the domestic front and not a lot of get, I think you're going to find yourself very rebellious over the next few days. But if you're fortunate enough to be able to head off to somewhere completely different, whether it is on a vacation or it is for a weekend away, or you go to a different venue, or you're going to see a band, the chances of having some kind of connection, but it probably will come through conversation, and that conversation needs to be very uplifting, and it needs to be with someone who has a different worldview or expands yours, or is brilliant fun to be with, not so mundane. Capricorn, Venus moving into house 8, which of course it does in the event chart from a Placidus viewpoint, is very intense. if you've been having the dialogue, having the conversation, and because the sun in your sector of relating has been forging such a solid link with your ruler Saturn, if you're lucky enough to be making that progression from a connection, a sparkle, an attraction to something that's getting more serious, then you can really enjoy Venus moving into Leo, because the chances are it's going to get much more invested, perhaps much more intense, perhaps much more intimate. But the thing that we also must be aware of is Venus being to do with money, and the 8th house, where she is for you in this journey, is about shared resources. But Pluto in the 2nd house is about how you view it in terms of your everyday world. So if your values, house 2, Pluto, vary from someone you're trying to connect to or trying to renegotiate something with, whether it's your wages or a contract, or it's just how much budget that there is to share, and you're dealing with someone who's very intractable, that could be more challenging. There is, of course, at the present time, that combination between Mars and Uranus, which is in House 5. House 5, very sparky, very playful, very sociable. But, of course, Mars and Uranus can create a lot of excitement, but a lot of impatience. You could be drawn to someone at this time whose sexual chemistry or magnetism you find very hard to resist. But whether it's actually a match that's good for you is another matter, because there's a lot of impulse around. So as things develop onwards, and we have that link between Venus and Jupiter from the 19th to the 25th, exact on the 21st of July, you probably get to an idea of whether you can actually connect to someone in a bit more of a practical way. And practicality is really important. You know, it might seem a bit dull and attractive, not very sexy, but it's what makes the world go round. If we can collaborate and cooperate, support each other in those thoughtful gestures. But if you're thinking very much about loot, there could be some very good fortune coming your way linked to a property matter across those days. So that's the 19th to the 20th. And in terms of your romantic situation, if you're all in and you're very invested and it's going well, it can get deeper. If you're not quite so sure, it's going to be around values or money that the tension point can really come up. And you're going to find out the outcome of what you need to do by the end of this month and the very start of August. So Aquarius, you're not romantic, are you? You're detached. You're like me. You have your glasses on when you go to kiss your wife. That's just one of many travails. But seriously, Venus moving into the 7th house is an opportunity to shift on from some of the brittleness that can occur across House 6, which can be more about the details. It can be about the domestic load and who does and doesn't do what. But the 7th house is where we start to see what we have in common. We can celebrate it. And also Mercury's there as well, so the chance to improve dialogue, our listening skills, also enhanced as well. But if you are one of those Aquarius people who does hanker for a relationship, and remember the last decan of Aquarius, the last 10 degrees, is sub-ruled by Venus. So that last third of Aquarius folks, a lot more romantic than the first lot, the first 10 degrees, including me, on 0 degrees, who are fiercely independent. Well, yes, this is a very special development, because the next 3 weeks gives a chance to bring some magic into play. What about Pluto? Well, Pluto's saying it's not a good thing to forge a relationship where it's not for the right reasons. Pluto is about fate, but it's also about our deeper motivations. If we want to connect to somebody because we get something from it, that's our primary motive. We're not so mindful of the spiritual connection. That's when some mischief can occur. And if you are in a relationship where you do feel that someone has power over you and is not good at listening to your needs or acknowledging that you see things differently, it's a very serious planetary aspect to consider. But let's just try to take Aquarius people as a whole, very difficult because we're all so different, and think about Venus in the 7th house. So this is the sector that's very Libran-like. So it's very much about trying to find that middle ground, letting little differences go. If there are lots of good things in our relationships of all kinds, whether it's with neighbours, friends, relatives, business associates, and not be quite so focused on what's not quite right. It gives us a greater sense of serenity, and it's all about balance, and also the expectation that probably it is hard to get everything we need. But if you are single and you are someone who can take off your spectacles when you're thinking of romance, unlike my good self, then this is a window of opportunity, particularly as when we get to that glorious angle to Jupiter in the 5th house of romance, which occurs across the 19th to the 25th, exact on the 21st, there could be some kind of really super meet-up, celebration, understanding, which at whatever level, whether it's a new friend, a new interest, a new colleague that we just really spark off with, can really bring some enjoyment and uplift into our lives. But essentially what we want the 7th house is make the most of our opportunities, even if they're not perfect, appreciating what we've got, understanding that other people have the right to see things differently, which often I think Aquarius people can be pretty good about. So what's the challenge? Well, it's just that Mars and Uranus, your modern ruler, are in a very tense alliance as this event is unfolding, which is going to peak on the 15th of July. So if you are in a relationship which is much more turbulent and not going so well, then I think what you might be thinking more about is self-preservation and spending time with the people that do reinforce you, that are good at acknowledging what you give, who understand who you are. So if you are in a relationship which is a bit toxic, I think it is possible that Pluto in the mix, Mars and Uranus together, could see you making a big decision pretty quickly. But even if things limp on, once Venus goes into the square with Uranus at the end of July, the start of August, that's going to be the final time to make a binding decision. But in the interim, the Sun will move to help support you on the 22nd of July as it moves into the sign of Leo. So relationships of all kinds are very, very important for you at the moment. But remember, it's not only romantic relationships, and you don't have to wear your glasses. So Pisces, for you, what's just finished occurring is the most magical alliance between Venus in Cancer and Neptune in your sign, your ruler. And that really is the stuff that you can have the most very elevated and beautiful connections through. Because Venus in the 5th house is very much to do with romance, and Neptune in your own sign is your identity. But not everybody can always understand the complexity of a Pisces person. You know, you shimmer, you're not always completely clear to other people where you're coming from. Sometimes you yourself, your moods can alter, shift around. But something quite special may have just unfolded. But if it has, what Venus moving into the 6th house is asking is that will this, or the question it's asking, will this work in a more practical way? And practical doesn't seem very romantic, does it? So I apologise for that, but it is important that we do feel that we're appreciated, that there is consideration, good manners, thoughtful gestures are all part of what makes any relationship, whether it's with a family member, a colleague, a friend, really, really work well. And because Venus is in that 6th house, opposing Pluto in the 12th house, if there is some lingering stuff that's hung around for some while, however much there's part of you that likes the trip, the light, fantastic, think the best of people, be in a kind of altered state of wonderment, some harsh realities could hit home. And maybe there's going to be some quite feisty conversations with Mars applying to Uranus. And very, very quickly, they're coming together on this event. So if you feel unheard or taken for granted, you're going to let someone know that that's not acceptable. And perhaps that's all going to be part of what the Capricorn full moon is going to mean for you, the second one, which occurs across the 21st of July, because that repetition of the event that occurred across 21-22 June again is asking you to think about your long-term future vis-a-vis what you get as an individual. So if you're in a relationship where you don't feel appreciated, recognised or supported for the practical and hard-working parts of what you put in, I feel that that is something you're going to review, and that of course will come to pass with Venus's clash with Uranus at the end of the month. If on the other hand you're forging that relationship, you've had that wonderful connection, you've had a beautiful night, you've talked into those proverbial wee small hours, you've listened to highly romantic music, you've had an enchanting dinner date, reality can strike now, but if you get through that reality, it can go from strength to strength. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me for my Venus through Leo deep dive. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now to help it thrive. All the best and take care.